DJ scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Good rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And I'm Ethan, and this evening we have some more appetizers for you. And on this show, we have the UFC 281 reaction show. And man, that was a much better card than I predicted. I said it wasn't, I predicted it really wasn't a stacked card or just didn't have really the marquee names, I guess. I guess I kind of underestimated it a little bit, but I don't really know why I did that. I don't know why I underestimated it. Because I mean it did have Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, but I guess after that I guess I underestimated the Zhang Weili and Carlos Barza fight. And I don't know. I just I downplayed the card in general, but it turned out it ended up being it definitely had some fireworks. But let's get into that main card right now. And so can I get a menu, and let's talk about that first matchup right now. And the first fight on the card was a lightweight bout between Dan Hooker and Claudio Paul Else. And I originally picked Claudio Paul Else to probably win by I think, what was it, heel hook, and that was because he had won like a number of his last couple fights. He was on a 5-fight win streak, and he had won 3 of those 5 fights by a knee bar, and that's exactly what he came in this fight trying to do, was either win by a knee bar, win by a heel hook. And pretty much right off the bat, he went for like a thunder roll or just like a ground type of attack, trying to take a takedown, to try to take Dan Hooker down while they were still dry early on in the first round. And he almost got it. He almost got Dan Hooker in some type of heel hook or knee bar early on. And Dan Hooker was luckily able to defend it and fight it off and get out of it. And I don't know what Claudio Paul Else issue was after that. It seemed like that was like his only weapon. That was his only game plan, was to try for that, either a knee bar or heel hook, and that's all he ended up trying to go for. It was just like a really odd strategy. And then after that, it just seemed like he just kind of kept just like kind of falling to the ground, hoping that Dan Hooker would come down to the ground for him, come down to the ground with him. And it never came together. It never happened for him. And then Dan Hooker just kind of started like throwing like body kicks and leg kicks at him, and then that round ended. And then Claudio in the second round, Claudio Paul Ellis just continued to try to do the same thing. He tried to do like a rolling thunder type of takedowns, like same thing. He was just trying to get the takedown and try to go for the leg locks. I think he may have got a hold of him again and once again, and he never got him back to the ground in the second round. And Dan Hooker just kept throwing like these body kicks and kicks to the bodies, and finally at 2 minutes and four in the second round with four at the 4 minutes at the 4 minutes and 6 seconds in the second round, Dan Hooker landed like a front kick to the body and got the TKO over Claudio Paul Ellis. So that's how that fight ended up finishing, and it was just I predicted how Claudio Paul Ellis was going to try to win, but I didn't predict the winner. So Dan Hooker definitely knew how Claudio Paul Ellis was going to try to win the fight, but he knew exactly what to look for. But it was just weird how Claudio just once that was defended, and once that didn't come to fruition, that nothing came of attempting to get the knee bar. It was just odd that he had no other weapons, nothing else. He had no striking, no other type of submissions. He had no real good takedown attempts other than trying to just kind of fall into Dan Hooker's legs and hope that he would just come falling down to the ground, hoping that Dan Hooker would come down to the ground with him. It was just a kind of an odd fight, and Dan Hooker just did a great job throwing kicks to the body, front kicks to the body, and that's how he ended up getting the win at 4 minutes and 6 seconds in the second round. And then on to the second fight. It was a bantamweight bout between Chris Gutierrez and Frankie Edgar, and this fight went exactly like I expected it to. I had mentioned how Frankie Edgar probably shouldn't have been fighting, probably should have just retired after his brutal loss to Marlon, or it was after taking that brutal front kick to Marlon Vera, which happened like a year ago, and how Chris Gutierrez was like 10 years his junior, and how Frankie Edgar had previously taken some devastating KOs, not TKOs, and it was just there was really no need for Frankie Edgar to be fighting anymore, and it was really sad the way this happened, because Frankie Edgar's family was in attendance. All of his kids were in attendance. I guess none of them had ever seen him fight before. And Frankie Edgar's had such a long legacy. He's been a lightweight champion before. There was just really no need for this. And I predicted that. I thought Frankie Edgar would probably get knocked out. I don't remember if I said I thought he would get knocked out in the first round or not, but I predicted that he would get knocked out, and that's exactly what happened. At 1 minute and in the first round, at 2 minutes and 1 second in the first round, he got knocked out by like a knee. It looked like it was almost like a flying knee, and got KO'd, flatlined in the middle of the ring. And it was just ugly. Like he just doesn't have the reaction speed anymore. It doesn't have the chin anymore. I mean, that just happens when you stick around in combat sports, any kind of sport in general, football, basketball. You get old, and especially with combat sports, once your reaction times go, your chin goes, it's gonna happen to you. You're gonna get embarrassed in there. And that's definitely what happened, and especially after taking that brutal front kick KO Marlon Vera like a year ago, where his entire face got concaved in. I mean, to think that anything good was going to come of this fighting Chris Gutierrez, a guy that's in the prime of his fighting career, to think that anything good was going to happen in this, to actually think he was going to beat Chris Gutierrez was just, I don't know, that was just a horrible matchup for his retirement fight. So I knew that nothing, that there was no positive outcome in Frankie Edgar taking this fight. So it was really, really sad, honestly. So that's what happened. He got KO'd at 2 minutes and 1 second of the first round. On to the second fight, which was exactly like I predicted. It was easily the fight of the night, but it didn't go as I planned. I did predict Dustin Poirier to win, but I predicted someone to get knocked out, but he didn't get the knockout, and he ended up getting a submission. And that the submission came at 2 minutes uh, at 2 minutes in the third round. But this fight, this was just a banger of a fight, and it came out. Michael Chandler, he came out like a tornado in the first round, kind of like he always does, and he really was putting it on Dustin Poirier in the first round. And it looked like he was. There was moments where it looked like he was maybe going to put Dustin Poirier away in that first round, and then towards like the very end of the round there, Dustin Poirier started putting it on Michael Chandler, and Michael Chandler kind of got saved by the bell, and Dustin Poirier splattered Michael Chandler's nose all over his face, and like I said, if there would have been maybe 30 more seconds in the first round, Dustin Poirier maybe could have finished Michael Chandler in the first round. So Michael Chandler kind of got saved by the bell in the first round, and then the second round came, and it was kind of similar to the first round. A lot of back and forth between Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler, but this time Michael Chandler was able to end up on Dustin Poirier's back, and this is where there was a little bit of controversy in the fight, and this was where there was a couple strikes to the back of the head from Michael Chandler to Dustin Poirier, and it was a funny shot where the Michael Chandler landed these strikes about, I don't know, it was about 4 or 5 of them to Dustin Poirier, to the back of Dustin Poirier's head, and literally right after they were thrown, the ref said something about him, and both Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier both stopped and looked at the ref like, "What the heck?" Michael Chandler knew that he landed them, and Dustin Poirier knew that he landed them. They were both just like, it was just kind of an epic moment of both of them stopping, looking like, "What the heck?" They both knew. They both knew something bad happened there. And then that wasn't the worst thing that happened with Michael Chandler being a little bit dirty in this fight, was when Michael Chandler went for his own rear naked choke. You could see at one point he was trying to like lift up on Dustin Poirier's nose, and he even got like up in the mouth there. He was fish hooking or doing something to try to be able to get the rear naked choke position, but he never was able to actually. Luckily, could do from what the stuff he was doing. Luckily, he was never actually able to get it in, and I guess most people when they're originally watching it maybe didn't see it or didn't hear it, but the ref did. If you watch it back, the ref did tell him to stop doing it. And when the commentators, when they were talking about it, said that they thought that Michael Chandler was putting his fingers in his glove, but that's not what he was doing. He was fish hooking and putting his fingers in Dustin Poirier's nose, trying to get him to lift his neck up so he could try to get the rear naked choke on. But then in the second round, karma comes back to bite you, and then that's when I think Michael Chandler, he was kind of out of gas, and he tried to go for he went for a takedown, and ended up kind of backfiring on him. And when he went for this takedown, he ended up losing position on that, and Dustin Poirier ended up on his back, and Dustin Poirier, he ended up getting the rear naked choke, and he ended up finishing Michael Chandler at 2 minutes in the third round. So that was just a banger of a fight with a little bit of controversy mixed in. And during the post-fight interview, Dustin Poirier was talking about what he was talking to Michael Chandler about and what he did, and that they were still heated at the end of the fight. So there was a bit of a scuffle, not really a scuffle in the ring, but they were still heated after the fight was over. And Dustin Poirier had a little bit to say afterwards, and they were talking it out even after the fight. So that was an exciting fight during the fight and even after the fight. So I think that easily um, won fight of the night, which it did. Uh, then on to the co-main event between the women's strawweight title match between Carla Esparza and Zhang Weili. This fight started out with Zhang Weili. She was just pretty much a bully against Carla Esparza from the start of the first round. She showed that she just had more power in the stand up, more power wrestling on the ground, and she landed a couple solid shots standing up. And then when she got her on the ground, she got her in a position where she had her like in a reverse uh, a reverse crucifix at one time, and she was just pretty much a bully the entire first round. And Carlos Barza really wasn't able to do like hardly anything in the first round, and then uh, just pretty much just dominated the first round, and then didn't cause a lot of damage to Carlos Barza, but it was pretty much clear that Zhang Weili was just the more powerful woman in the first round. And then in the second round, uh, it was a lot of the same. And then Zhang Weili ended up getting Carla Esparza in a regular, a traditional crucifix, and from that position, she was ended up getting Carla Esparza in a rear naked choke, and that's when she ended up finishing her at 1 minute and 5 seconds in the second round. And I had picked Zhang Weili to win this match, but I figured that she was gonna knock her out, because Zhang Weili is just one of the strongest, probably the strongest, most explosive, most powerful women's strawweights in the division, out of just like almost any women fighter in general. She's just so powerful, got some of the most impressive knockouts that there are. And so she ended up taking the title from Carla Esparza and being crowned the new women's strawweight champion. And so that was just impressive, just a complete dominant win over Carla Esparza, and a pretty impressive way that she did it, from transitioning from the crucifix position and transitioning that to a rear naked choke. It was some high level grappling and wrestling there. And then on to the middleweight match between the champion Israel Adonijay, and Alex Pereira, who had the long history of fighting, I guess 2 times. I guess it's kickboxing and glory. I guess I was saying K1, which is kickboxing, but they talked about it a couple times on there. How I guess it was glory championship kickboxing, and I had thought I thought that they maybe fought twice, but I guess the only one that I had watched was the time that Israel Adonijah had been knocked out. So they had actually fought twice before, and and uh, Adonijah had been beat by unanimous decision as well. And I guess there's some controversy in that one where people thought maybe is Israel Donajay maybe should have won that one, split decision, whatever. You know how judges are, and even some people thought in I guess the one where Alex Pereira came back to win in the one where he knocked Israel Donajay out. He came back from a standing 8 count, I guess. So there's a lot of history between them and a lot of controversy even in those glory kickboxing bouts as well. But this was a wild fight. This was crazy. This was a crazy match. This bout reminds me a lot uh, of of the of when Usman lost his fight by when he got KO'd with the head kick uh, in the waning seconds of his match. So that's what this bout reminded me a lot of. But anyways, uh, so uh, Alex Pereira, he came out very physical in this match, and he was putting a lot of pressure on Israel Donajay early in the first round, and it looked like he was going to go on and pretty much just win the first round. And it looked like it was just kind of like a kickboxing match. No real takedowns attempts or anything, and not even much clinching or grappling. There was a few times that they clinched up, and but even when they clinched up, the few times it looked like Alex Pereira won uh, those exchanges. He threw some knees in there and a couple uppercuts, and then at the very last seconds of the first round, Israel Adonijay landed like an uppercut and then followed it with like a hook, and it looked like Alex Pereira got saved by the bell there, literally, because he got rocked at the very end of the first round. So it was lucky that he the bell rang there because he got hammered at the very end of the first round. So he probably would have won the first round if it wouldn't have been for the very end. So he probably would have given the first round to Israel Adonijay just because of that. And then in the second round, it was a lot of the same of what happened in the first round. But then Alex Pereira actually went for a takedown at the very end of the end of the second round, which no one probably could have predicted that. It wasn't an impressive takedown, but it was a takedown. But like I said, it was at the very end of the second round, and the horn sounded right after, so he wasn't able to follow it up with any ground and pound or any submission attempts. So you probably gave the second round to Alex Pereira, and then in the third round, uh, Alex Pereira tried to kind of start off um, kind of similar what he did in the first 2 rounds, but you kind of tell that he was kind of a little tired, a little worn down, not didn't have as much in his gas tank like he did in the first 2 rounds. And then Israel Adonijay, he's been doing this more, and he's obviously the smaller guy. Alex Pereira is huge for this weight division, the middleweight division. Alex Pereira is huge for this division, and Israel Adonijay probably has better stamina, better cardio, used to the weight cut, and Israel Adonijay starts picking him apart a little bit, and controls the positions a little bit, the clinch and stuff a little bit. And then Israel Adonijay actually takes him down and holds him there for quite a bit of time, that doesn't really get like any kind of ground and pound, but he definitely holds him down for quite a while in the third round. So that round ends, and you probably end up giving the third round to Israel Janajay just because he controlled most of the fight and controlled a lot of the fight on the ground. And he did end up in full guard, Alex Pereira's full guard. It was actually a full takedown and actually had a good portion of the round actually in Alex Pereira's full guard and did have a little bit of ground and pound from it. But then if you knew what was going to happen in the fifth round, this is something maybe you should have paid attention to, because in the fourth round, I think people were, the refs, not the refs, but the commentators were talking about how Alex Pereira really wasn't like throwing anything, wasn't attacking, wasn't pushing forward, wasn't like throwing any punches or anything. To me, I think he was actually taking that round off so he could do something in the fifth round. Like nothing really happened at all in the fourth round. Israel Janajay didn't really do anything. He did more in the fourth round, so you could say that he probably won the fourth round. But Israel Janajay or Alex Pereira really didn't do anything in the fourth round at all. He really didn't throw any punches, any kicks, or really anything in the fourth round. So that's when the fifth round comes around, and then Alex Pereira does actually start coming back in the fifth round, and he looks more like what he looked like in the first and the second round, and he starts getting Israel Janajay up against the cage like he was in the first and second round, and he throws this uppercut and he catches Israel Janajay with it, and he's got him up on and gets Israel Janajay on skates, and he's bobbing and weaving and all over the place, and just continues to land punches, and then finally the ref comes in to save him, and it's just I was just blown away. Like I said, it reminded me of when Usman lost his belt in the waning of seconds when he got head kicked a couple cards back, and it was just wild because you were thinking if Adonijay could have just stayed off the cage and probably could have just stayed on his bike and stayed away from Alex Pereira for one more round, he was going to retain the belt, but he just ended up getting caught and got TKO'd. And, there's a lot of people out there saying that it was an early stoppage and would have rather seen him get completely KO'd or flatlined, but he once he got caught and he was bobbing and weaving and taking a bunch of unanswered shots, and his hands were down, and he was like this. I mean, that's part of intelligently protecting yourself, and he wasn't intelligently protecting himself. If he would have took 2 or 3 more clean shots from Alex Pereira, he would have been flatlined, laid out on the middle of the canvas. So yeah, that was a wild one, and I picked Israel Adonijay to retain his belt. More than likely, I was thinking it was probably going to just be like by unanimous decision, and I figured Adonijay probably would have tried to wrestle more, or maybe try to go for a submission or something like that. And I think that's probably what ended up being Adonijay's downfall, was trying to stand and strike with him, and ended up turning it into just pretty much strictly a kickboxing match, other than the third round when he did take him down and had his most successful round with him. because it was pretty clear that Alex Pereira had no real skills standing up. So I think that just blew up in Adonijay's face by playing into the game plan, playing into the strengths of Pereira and doing what he does best. And it definitely third time was not the charm for Israel Adonijay, and lost to him for the third time in basically the same kind of sports. He basically got into a kickboxing match, which I think he learned he is not a better kickboxer than Alex Pereira. So let's just go over these one more time. So Dan Hooker, lightweight match between Dan Hooker and Paul Ellis. That fight ended by Dan Hooker won that by TKO body kick at 4 minutes and 6 seconds in the second round. Bantamweight, second bout, bantamweight match between Chris Gutierrez and Frankie Edgar. Chris Gutierrez won that by KO knee at 2 minutes and 1 second of the first round. Third bout, lightweight bout between Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. Dustin Poirier won that by submission, rear naked choke at 2 minutes of the third round. The co-main event, strawweight title fight between Carl Zhang Weili and Carla Esparza. Zhang Weili won that by submission, rear naked choke at 1 minute and 5 seconds of the second round. And then the main event, middleweight championship bout between Alex Pereira and Israel Adonijay, ended. Alex Pereira won that by TKO punches at 2 minutes and 1 second of the fifth round. And you have two new champions in the middleweight champion, Alex Pereira, and the women's strawweight champion, and Zhang Weili. And I think, trying to think of what they said here. I want to say they said that this card had the most first round knockouts in UFC history, is what they were saying. So that was another note that they mentioned on this card. So that's pretty crazy as well. I'm trying to see what it shows. It shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 first round knockouts on this card. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?